Mayor Michael Hancock, thanks for joining me after your State of the City address. It's a little different this way.
Yeah, it was a lot different. It was really strange. Normally, we're used to standing room only crowds, outdoors somewhere beautiful. It was beautiful, by the way, at the museum over with the skyline behind us. But we were missing our community and key agencies. All good though. We social distancing is important.
Well, you all right. So in your speech, you mentioned Denver's 227 million budget shortfall in the state of the city, and it will mean hard cuts. What gets cut?
One, first of all, it's always hard when we ask city employees to go on furlough without pay, because I know that it hits employees differently, proportionally, depending on what they're paid and what they do every day. So it's very difficult call to make. But I think you're going to see, some things of basic maintenance around our public realm, like our parks, for example, may not be mowed as well or as much. We may not empty the trash at the parks as much. Library hours being cut, recreation center hours being reduced as well. A lot of the same things that we had to do to get through the Great Recession, I think we'll see. But our goal is to maintain essential services and try to get back to some level of normalcy as quickly as possible.
Do you predict future furloughs?
Yeah, we're going to have furloughs in 2021, unfortunately. And we've tried to be as direct and honest with the city employees. We're trying to preserve their jobs while getting through this very difficult time.
Just so you know, I hit mute in between each one so that I'm sure that I'm recording you. You also mentioned keeping public projects moving despite what we're going through, and it's going to drive a good job strategy with better pay and better benefits. How do you do that and still have to furlough employees and cut $227 million?
A lot of these dollars that we're alluding to, such as the bond program, are dollars that were already secured and legally passed by the people. And so those dollars can't be used for anything else. They cannot be redirected. All we can do is to maybe pause those projects. But let me tell you, there's very few industries, Marshall, that tap the full breadth of the economy, the entire ecosystem, like the construction industry. And so like we did in 2008, 2009, when I helped Mayor Hickenlooper at the time construct our recovery from the Great Recession, we focused on how we can expedite projects, construction projects in particular, because of its depth and how it penetrates the economy. And so we want to do that here again. We already had $1 billion, almost $1 billion in bonds, as well as our capital projects, other projects such as the 16th Street Mall, which have been using TIF dollars. Those dollars are used for those projects specifically, and by ordinance, they can't be redirected. Well, they can be redirected, they're TIF projects, but thanks to City Council, we're going to maintain our commitment there, and we'll have a long-term strategy to keep people working.
You called racism a public health crisis. What's the significance of that designation?
It's how we approach it. Instead of just thinking about it in silos of terms of isolated incidents, we need to think about it as a system of challenges that continues to permeate through a lot of our interactions and industries and sectors. And the reality is that fundamentally we can trace it back to 450 years ago when we really started, when slavery came and we really started the exercise and practice of racism and using it as a tool to disenfranchise, to depress a race of people. And we see it permeating even today. And law enforcement really, unfortunately, across this country, continue a lot of those practices. And that's why you have books like The Next Jim Crow that kind of show and demonstrate to all of us how this virus of racism continues to penetrate even within law enforcement activities with the community and in business and so on and so forth. So I said we got to do it differently. We got to approach it differently. Not isolated incidents with just law enforcement, but as a virus that continues to impact our community. Let's research it. Let's come up with the best development of training and strategies to combat it. And then let's also work toward reconciliation.
Does the designation open up any funding avenue that you can access?
It doesn't open up any funding, but I think what it does, it gives everyone a new way in which to look at it. Two, it engages a whole new bailiwick of people and expertise and thinking around it. And we think about it scientifically and sociologically and in a way that allows us to say, it's not just about how we change rules in police officers and policing, it's how we change rules in society, period. And we recognize it. When we recognize it, we call it out and we deal with it effectively. We got to equip everybody with that.
Also, in your speech, you asked support for Councilwoman Robin Kanich's proposal to deliver funding for better shelters, expanded services, and more housing to address homelessness. What are you asking for from Denver taxpayers?
Well, it's a 0.25% increase in our sales taxes. Let me just say this clearly. Whenever we talk about increasing taxes, it's a concern. It's nothing we take easily or lightly, I should say. This is a big deal. But we recognize today that if we can't continue to do what we've always done and expect different results when it comes to dealing with our people who are experiencing homelessness in the city of Denver, we need more resources. And we said last year when we defeated the repeal of our urban camping ban that we can do better. Well, this is a step in that direction of doing better by bringing more resources so that we can actually have a coordinated strategy, or at least resources to support that coordinated strategy around homelessness.
When and how do the encampments end?
Very soon. We are already working to, bring together they're together, but to work on a strategy to clean up these encampments. We recognize that they're unsafe, they're unsanitary, and we got to move our individuals to a safer, better managed situation, and we're doing that. We have enough beds to accommodate the people who are in these encampments, and we're going to try to move them to it. We got to do it in a safe, strategic manner.
The Pepsi Center testing site is out of funding at the end of the week. Will
It's
we
out of
have a
funding
testing
as
site?
of right now, but I got to tell you, we continue to work with the state. I talked to the governor today. We're both very, very committed to finding a way to keep it going. And we have our teams working around the clock to try to work. There are a lot of little details that have to be managed. This was not easy to set up, and it's not going to be easy to kind of manage across city and state functions as well, but they are working hard to make that happen.
Will it be open tomorrow if it's out of funding?
It'll be open tomorrow.
Will it be open next week?
My goal is for it to be open next week. You know what? The state has committed to lean in and to help fund it. The question is a lot about transition and how we manage it going forward. So we know the resources, at least partly with the state there, are on the table, and we have them available. So we'll find a way to keep it going until we get all the other nuts and bolts taken care of.
You just appointed a Denver sheriff 1 week ago. 6 days into his new job, an inmate who was still supposed to be serving time in the detention center walked right out the front door. Wasn't the appointment of a new sheriff supposed to end stories like this?
Oh, absolutely. It should never happen, no matter who the sheriff is. And there's some extenuating circumstances of what happened. This guy apparently was pretty clever in what he did, and it's not a good feeling. It's a concern for all of us that it was even allowed to happen. But I know that Sheriff Diggins, as he has alerted the entire community that we are looking for this individual, we're going to do everything we can to turn over every rock to find him. But in the meantime, we're also going to make sure that we continue to dot every I and cross every T to make sure we know who we're releasing. He went through extraordinary circumstances to conceal who he was. We got to make sure that we got to be one step ahead of those who try to be even more crafty while they're inside our detention facilities.
It sounds like he duped deputies. Is it that easy to dupe a deputy?
I don't think so. There are, like I said, a lot of other extenuating circumstances that were involved, and whatever he did, he was pretty crafty with it. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We got to make sure it doesn't happen again.
You're a baseball fan. That goes without saying.
I'm a sports fan. I love it all.
You're equal opportunity. I get it. If we can't keep COVID-19 out of Major League Baseball, how can we keep it out of schools?
It's a very difficult situation, and I got to tell you, I know that Superintendent Susana Cordova and her team are trying to figure this out. You know what? We're going to find ways to educate our children. Let me tell you why this is so difficult, Marshall. When we did the shutdown and schools closed and all kids went online, they got tablets, still society, there's a technology or information technology gap. A lot of kids were lost. And unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to finish their school year the way they should have. We cannot afford to let that happen. Now, I'm not advocating rushing kids back into the classroom, but I am advocating this for smart, strategic thinking about how we can do it, while at the same time making sure that we don't lose track of our most vulnerable children who may not have the same resources that some other kids are able to take for granted. And so a lot of work and thinking has to go into that.
Are we being honest with parents that it's just a 2-week delay for schools? And are we being honest with sports fans that we're going to have fans in the stands at some point this year? Or like, should we just be like, no, it's going to be X and get used to it?
I think that the situation with DPS is still evolving. We right now we're looking at a 2-week delay. We can probably expect that at some point there'll be another modification to that, or at least a new plan that is released with regards to some hybrid system or setup. I'm only assuming that, but I know that it's a very difficult situation. With regards to fans, you know what? We are all big sports fans. I want nothing more than for the Rockies to continue playing, the Nuggets to make it through this playoff situation, or bubble in Orlando, and see our Broncos play. They're starting their opening game in September. But that's, quite frankly, even though as a fan it's hard for me to hear it and say it, it's not as much a priority as it is for us to keep everyone safe and to adhere to those protocols that we're asking everyone to adhere to, so that we can come back next season and hopefully have unfiltered, uninhibited access to seeing our heroes out in front of the classroom or out on the court or the field.
Assuming the seasons continue, do you support a variance to have fans in the stands at Coors Field or at Mile High?
I would have to see every one of the plans, to be honest with you. And I learned not to just say yes or no. We got to know how they would keep everyone safe and what protocols we put in place to maintain that safe and healthy activity.
This may be redundant, but based on that answer, but would you go to a game?
I would. If I was secured, if I felt safe in the social distancing aspect of it, I would wear my mask. I would go. Let's talk about that for a minute. If you think about the Denver Broncos, for example, I think the NFL is one of the more unique leagues we have, in that they can probably exist without fans in the stand this season because of their TV contracts. But the reality is the stadiums are so large that they can probably have a third or half of their fans there and keep people socially distant. And I think that's the kind of thing you may see as an easy rollout until there's a vaccine available.
I don't want to belabor this. This just came to me, though. In a situation like that, you're kind of making the ushers and the personnel who work the games as the pseudo law enforcement. How do you not have that happen?
I mean, not only that, you want to keep them safe as well, right? And so that's why I said I have to see every plan, every strategy for protocol and to keep people safe and distant before it happens. So, but you're absolutely right. We would have to know all those nitty-gritties. And now you begin to understand, Marshall, why many of these plans that are being presented to public health officials all over the country are hundreds of pages long, because every potential interaction scenario has to be managed and thought about.
I end on this. I tell people I'm up and down. Depends on the day. Today it's kind of mixed. How are you?
How am I?
Yeah.
I take the same thing. These are extraordinary times, man. There are days when I'm I feel energized and ready to meet it. There are days when it's just like, you know what, I need a boost, and I got to go to my secret, quiet place of prayer and thought. It's tough at times, and I want everyone to be okay, but it's tough. And at the same time, trying to be there for your family and try to energize them as well. So I feel your situation, and I can empathize.
Thank you for making the time, Mayor.
You bet, man. Take care.
All right. See you.